And all right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Collective Conversations. I'm your host, Mike Brewer, and I am powered up about today's episode. We've got Ernest Oriente, is the president of Power Hour and the author of Smart Match Alliances. Dating back to 1995, he and his team have spent over 50,000 hours working with 3,100 clients, more than 3,100 clients in 15 time zones around the world, all by telephone, while vacationing with my family, or his family rather, in 30 countries over the last 26 years and never working on Mondays and Fridays. And I expect to dig into that. His passion is helping clients reach and exceed their dreams while balancing fun, family, fitness, and financial rewards. Clients include owners of real estate buildings and assets, corporate housing companies, property management services, property management sales and vendors and suppliers. And we got leadership publishing companies and their advertising sales teams around the world. Ernest, you are a man well-traveled. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. And what a pleasure, Mike, to be here. And you are an industry icon. And when your team reached out to me to connect, I was thrilled. I've really been looking forward to this connection. We've been flying around the same attitude and altitude for a long time. Wouldn't you agree?
I would 100% agree with that. I know I was sharing with you prior to hitting the record button. I think I was first turned on to you in 1998. I was living in Seattle, Washington at the time. And I remember getting your emails. I'm not sure, I couldn't cite the source, so you can't go back and pay attribution to that source. But I was just blown away by your passion, your charisma, your commitment, your intention to our industry. And I've just been a fan ever since then. And I get that email all the time and I read it. And then when LinkedIn rolled around, I just have been dialed into everything that you do for our industry. So I'm excited about this conversation.
Thank you. I do love our sector deeply, the property management, the multifamily. I really love the vendors and suppliers. I have truly the most unique perspective because we work on both sides. We help vendors be the best that they can be. And then we help property management companies and multifamily owners all the way down to the leasing level. So I'm very comfortable from the site level all the way up or down or sideways, which we might talk about. But I love helping those achieve their goals, with grace and with ease. And I really, no matter where we are around the world working with clients, there's kind of this reoccurring theme of leadership, of leasing, of sales, of marketing. And it's simply, taking those themes and helping others realize that don't go it alone, that there's other shortcuts, and with grace and ease, you can accomplish your goals. You know what I'm saying?
I absolutely do. It just, as you're speaking through that, I can't help but have this sort of image in my mind. And it's an image that you put out either on your emails or I don't know where I saw it, but you have a whistle around your neck. Yeah. And you're the coach, right? And I feel like there's sort of this avuncular nature about you, meaning you're like that fantastic uncle in the family that has all the wisdom that is appropriately placed at the right time in the right forum to really enrich people's lives. That's just the way I think about you as a person, individual, and a professional. It's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. And the spirit of coaching, different than when I first began back in 95. Everyone knew what a speaker was and a consultant and a trainer. And you generally lived on a corporate jet flying around Sunday nights and came back on Friday. And that's how you created, billable events. And I had really a different vision about coaching. And some of it came from my corporate days, that I was able to see that I could be in and out of a market, probably like yourself. You would travel in, you'd be there. And then in between, they may call you and, hey, could you give me a little advice or I need, right? You know what I'm talking about?
That's right.
And then it was email. You could email combined with a phone call, and you could coach and guide. Well, let's talk about that new hire. Why don't you, in those days, fax me the resume, we'll look at it, right? In those days, you could, at least, and so I began realizing I was doing that in my corporate days, and I thought I have a vision, but the real spirit of coaching is to work side by side, shoulder to shoulder. In other words, shoulder to shoulder, it doesn't matter what I know, it matters what you need. So we're shoulder to shoulder, and I'm just going to be just a touch in front, right? So that I can help my clients get to the next step. And the other part about coaching is that we might work on something on Wednesday, and I'll say, I'll see you next Wednesday. But in between, they might go, hey, here's our budget, or here's our marketing plan, or here is that new hire we're thinking about. What do you think? And there's always that connectivity. Or, hey, man, stuff's really hitting the fan. I could really use your help and guidance. And I really loved that part. And hence the reason we have clients that have been with us 10 and 20 and 25 years later, that we still coach and guide them because their situations are ever changing. And our ability to move with them continues to be right out in front with those reoccurring themes that we see all over the world. And then, of course, the shifts and change with digital, the shift and change with the pandemic. I mean, all of that has created all of us to shift in ways we never imagined, right? Would you agree on that?
Oh, I would 100% agree. I think there were, at least in my head, there was a groundswell of a lot of this activity happening prior to COVID.
Right.
But I certainly think that when COVID hit the masses, let's say that was March of 2020, then a lot of this groundswell of activity that was happening, especially as it relates to the digital space, it just COVID accelerated the pace of all of that change. I mean, Zoom is probably the best example of that, where you're now doing virtual meetings versus in-person meetings. But I think it really highlighted and emphasized the need for a good coach, a good mentor, a good guide, a good Sherpa. I know there's a mountain in your background there, but a good Sherpa to sort of guide into this new territory of doing not only business, right? But a lot of people have been impacted personally, and
Right.
I certainly think that impacts us professionally. So I agree with you 100%.
You're so right. And by the way, the mountain behind me is symbolic. First off, yes, we're based in Park City, Utah, where the Olympics are held. We have 3 ski resorts within 3, 6, and 9 minutes of where my corporate offices are.
Awesome.
I do start at 3:30 in the morning, and I do ride a chairlift at 9 a.m., like going to the gym, and I'm done by 10:30, and I'm back for 11 o'clock meetings. I mean, that's, sort of. But the real symbolic part of this, when I realized how dark COVID was, I wanted to bring to my clients an opportunity to think about optimism and opportunity in the darkest pandemic, the darkest moment maybe in civilization. Who could imagine we're hiding in our closets, we're cleaning off our boxes, we're leaving our groceries in the garage for a day. I mean, who could ever imagine the amount of fright and the reshaping of our world and the stress and strain? Think about the apartment buildings, right? Apartment buildings, 100 units, were never intended to house 300 people 24/7.
That's
Right?
right.
You've got moms and dads that have never worked remote. You've got kids underfoot that are doing remote learning, to which parents are going, I don't even know. You got noise. You got, okay, funny story. You remember when resident complaints would come in, by the way, Charlie was upstairs vacuuming last night at 2 a.m, right? So you call Charlie, go, hey, Charlie, knock off the vacuum. Okay. The new one is, hey, Charlie's up there Zooming at 10 in the morning. 10 in the morning.
That's right.
Trying to keep the noise down. I mean,
I don't know. I don't want to know what your strategic initiative is for 2022. I don't care.
I can come up and give the presentation. I've heard it so many times. But there really has been a stress and strain on our residents in the world of property management. There's been an incredible amount of pressure on our leasing teams, on our site teams. Hence, that rolls up to what our districts, our regionals, and then all of our corporate structure. The strain, the difficulty of running remote, virtual leasing, all the technology piece that's accelerated, to your point. But it's not been easy on the human level. You're absolutely right. And whether it's been resignations, turnover, burnout, how about leasing people or site people that have never worked remote, and this is a brand new experience as well on that side. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Can I put a little comma there? I want to back up, because I think this really speaks to one's ability to show up each day with both optimism, to steal your word, but a sort of a positive outlook. And that is, you said, I wake up at 3:30. I start my day at 3:30 in the morning. My imagination tells me, and I don't know your personal life. I hope that we can unpack a little bit of it here. I imagine at 3:30 in the morning, you are going through a morning routine that primes your pump for the day. Is that fair to assume? And if so, could you share that with us?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to backtrack just for a second.
Okay.
Getting up early in my early days in the sector, 1988, I was in San Diego, and I would get to the office, the classic 8 o'clock, and nice easy drive in those days. And I'd get my work done, but I realized that, whoever needed what and the interruptions and stuff, I didn't get my best work done. And every day I felt myself chasing my tail a little bit. And then I
Understood.
realized, I thought, what happens if I get up an hour early? And what if I sit at my desk at my home and get a little bit of work done? And that started the 7 a.m. All of a sudden I'm going, wow, I was doing financial reports, variance reports, employee reviews, really like what I call genius work. We'll talk more about that. And I realized it was working. And then we had our first son in 91. And I really wanted to be home to be with him in the evening. And I thought, now, wait a minute, what if I moved the clock back to 6 a.m. and had 2 hours of genius work before I got to the office and could be home an hour early? And it worked. Okay.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
And then our daughter came along and I moved it to 5 a.m. 2 years later. And then my youngest. So that was the first genesis. The second part of it was when I launched my coaching company and realized that I wanted a global footprint and realized that at 4 a.m, it was already middle of the day with clients in Ireland or London or Europe. And the end of the day, I was picking up clients in Australia, because it was their next day. So I used the time zones that I could work in the mornings and I could be there in the afternoons when my kids were rolling on. I wanted to be the best father, the best parent, the best husband. And that was the driver for that I could be there for their afternoon plays or their recitals or their soccer matches, whatever it was. So there was a little bit of that. And then even now with my kids now that are in their 20s and early 30s, I still continue that because of the clients that I work with, right?
Sure.
So there was that part. But I want to address, so that was the structure. That was the mindset, right? But the structure of what we call your genius work and your perfect day is one of these principles, right? And if you want to know how to have your best Tuesday, where does that begin? End of the day, Monday, right? You do all your planning. So what kind of planning do you do for today before you start tomorrow, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That pre-planning, right, is the
That's right.
starting point, right? So I imagine you use something like that, right, to finish today so you're ready for the next day.
Yeah, every night. And it's predicated on something that somebody told me many years ago. Short version is go home at night with a clean desk, even if that means just putting everything in one simple stack and then taking, back in the day it was a day planner, but today it's sort of an abbreviated version of that. But then you write down the 4 to 6 things, and there's a principle behind that too, but the 4 to 6 big rocks, and try to narrow that to 1 to 3 big rocks that you need to focus on for the following day, because that imbues it in your mind, your subconscious mind, when you're asleep, goes to work on those 3 things. So yes, that's the principle I use.
Wow. I mean, word for word. I just have to know, did you steal my notes today? Like hell's bells. That's it. That's the blueprint. Even the subconscious mind, I'm listening and I'm going, what? hey, who? I need to pay you a royalty. Are you kidding me? Wow. That concludes today's presentation, ladies and gentlemen, because Mike just sung from the highest mountain.
Oh, no. I'm certain I learned that from someone like yourself.
Those are the words. Okay, so let's capsule what you just shared. Spot on. If you want the best Tuesday, you end Monday with a designated window, what I call time blocking, literally an appointment with yourself. 4:45, the alarm comes up, time block. And as you time block, it's a reminder. I'm going to prepare for tomorrow, whether it's the meetings I need to prepare for, the appointments I'm going to run, whatever the projects are, the things that you've got blocked that are in there. And that's exactly right. You leave with a smile. You leave all your stress and strain, literally and figuratively, throwing the keys on the desk. And then you're exactly right. Your subconscious mind goes to work and you wake up happier. You wake up also with new ideas or new epiphanies or new ahas and so forth. And so, frankly, even as I was preparing for today, I was working on that last night, and there were even a couple of additional things that I wanted to either share or mention, or the things we might cover along the way. So, that is exactly the spirit. The best today began yesterday. That's step one. Now, step two, to answer your question, I'm also a believer, and there's some coaching guidance that I give to clients about the planning of their best day. So if you look at the research that's been done on Olympians, right, Olympic athletes, there are rituals and routines that they map for success. And in those rituals and routines, every day is a gold medal performance. And honestly, Mike, every day you and I have a gold medal performance, right? Except that we're not getting the massages at 1 o'clock and the naps at 3 and the perfect meals. We're not getting any of that, but we're corporate athletes. And what does that mean? Another coaching principle: you're on video. Your team does not want to know you're having a bad day. They don't want to know that you have a short fuse. They don't want to know that you're hungry because you've missed 2 meals. Okay, they're expecting you to deliver, and you're on video. Because if you came in to a meeting and said, listen, gang, I'm up and out of here, I've had enough, your team will never forget that and forever store that regarding you and your leadership, right?
That's right. That's right.
On video. So if you think about the fact that we are corporate athletes and every day is a gold medal performance, we need to be our best and do our best, then therefore we have to prepare how we start the day and how we roll into the day. And that includes, again, from the night before, what time do you go to bed? All the research about sleep, it's when you go to bed and when you get up. No matter how many hours, but whatever that ritual and routine is. For me, it's 9:30 to 3:30, but most days it's 10:30 to 3:30, 5 hours. Generally, I'm up before the alarm. Okay. For
Yep.
me, I start with 1,000 crunches, 200 push-ups. That's what I measure, is what improves. And then I go into my day step by step by step as I roll through my best day. It means what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to do my fitness, the preparation for that day, all of those things. When do you check text? When do you check email? When do you check your internal systems? All of those things you roll down so that when the lights go on, you're ready for your perfect day. It doesn't mean that the day will go perfect, but
That's
it
right.
means you built enough resilience that if it goes well, high five. If it doesn't, there's enough resilience that you can adapt and adjust nimbly. Your perspective on that, your point of view?
Oh, I cannot agree more. And I've probably learned this the hard way. I think to speak to the principle of going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, I think I would place likely the highest level of importance on that. And I think to speak specifically about waking up at the same time every day, and your point about either 9:30 or 10:30, my imagination tells me that for whatever reason, if you went to bed at 1:30, you would still wake up at 3:30, because that waking up at the same time every morning is the key.
Right.
The key. And I think that morning routine, those rituals that you speak of, it are Zig Ziglar. I imagine you have been exposed to Zig Ziglar in the past. He talked about this principle of priming the pump, right? He
Right.
tells the story about being out on a road somewhere and can't get water out of this thing, but he didn't know how to work it. And then somebody finally told him, you pump on this thing long enough, right, the water will start flowing. And I think it speaks to the idea that you have to get into these routines that have an underpinning of discipline about them.
Right.
That's the most important thing in my head, but you have to get into the routine and the discipline, um, so that you have the potential of being emotionally loaded or having your logic hijacked by emotion, right?
Right.
Your mind's going to go back to this, hey, there's a discipline
Right.
that you have imbued in your head. When you see adversity, the first thing you need to do is stop and take a deep breath
Right.
before you react or respond, so that you do that thoughtfully and mindfully. And it's through those disciplines and routines that gets you ready for that moment in time where you could get hijacked otherwise. When you don't have those disciplines in your life, you're just triggered by whatever stimulus is in the environment. You just get triggered.
Absolutely. You're going to hit the office door. Let's go back to the leasing centers. You're going to hit the office door. You're going to hit your corporate offices. You're not prepared for the day. You're scrambling right along. You've got a bit of a headache. You're running into a meeting. You're not prepared. There's something about brand. I'm going to talk about this just for just a moment.
Mhm.
If you were to walk down the hall of your corporate office, okay, and Mary's going to pass you by, there's a brand right here on Mary's forehead, and it says, Mary is a rock star. Okay, Tim rolls by and you go, Tim is always late, never prepared, sloppy work. Rick's going to roll by, fast riser. You could give me one sentence on every single person on your corporate team. And by the way, they have one sentence about you. Okay?
True statement. True statement.
Just another piece. So for those that don't have a plan, and make no mistake, whether we're talking about those of our clients that run $100 million companies, billion-dollar enterprises, publicly held companies, or entrepreneur teams of two, it's a reoccurring theme. If you want your best day today, it started yesterday. And if you want your best day today, you're going to prep and prime it so that you're set and ready to succeed. Okay. Now, I want to go back to something you mentioned about big rocks, which he mentioned big rocks. I love that. Okay. Because then it's how do you run your day? Okay. And there's a couple of strategies in there. You are right about the big rocks. That comes right from that professor, right? That brings the empty jug.
That's
puts the
right.
rocks in, says to the students, is it full? Student says,
That's right.
yeah, it's full. No, it's not. Then the pebbles, then the sand, then the water. Okay. Now
That's right.
let's bring that to life. When we get started with a corporate executive, again, I don't care if they're the CEO, I don't care if they're a leasing person, I don't care if they're a vendor or supplier. We give them some guidelines for the next 5 days that we want them to track their time and track their tasks. Okay. And you might say, wow, so much of what you're covering is really on the personal or personal development side. Yes, because if you get the foundation right, then we can do all the other work, which is about leadership, driving your revenue. Look, we do focus on people and profits and performance, and we know sales, and we know marketing, and we know leadership. But these are some core foundational. It's like a pyramid that you've got to get the base right. If you get the base right, then everything else happens. If we focus on the top and you have no base, then you fail, right?
That's right.
Makes
That's right.
sense? Right.
That's right.
So we have a 5-day exercise, and it goes like this. Every 30 minutes, I want you to track what the task was you did. Okay. And then next to the task, I want you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being your genius work. For example, when you and I can be here. Boom. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, anybody could have responded to the meeting note to get us here. That's like a 3. That's an administrative operational task. I have 1,000 emails coming and going on a daily basis. I have 4 assistants behind the scenes that are handling all those. And the initial notes back to Matthew came back and forth over my name, but handled by my team until it was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. So if you think about the tasks 1 to 5, we sort of break it down. Things you can delegate in 60 seconds or less. Hey, we need more toner. Hey, upgrade that piece of software. Hey, make this phone call. Hey, 6s and 7s are tasks that would take 60 minutes to 6 hours. So if you send me a comprehensive spreadsheet and there's a lot of what if and a lot of nuances, you and I might walk through and I might have 76 lines of steps to go through, but that is a 6 or 7 task for you. But for me, it might be an 8 or 9 if I'm supporting you, for example. And so we look at 1 to 5s and we say, we're never doing those again. Done. We look at the 6 and 7s and say, that's really where the big windows are. So all you do are 8, 9s, and 10s, the big rocks. So imagine if every part of your day was structured tied to the big rocks, right?
Yes.
So if you think about, your favorite, musician, right, who sings at the mic, beautiful music, they sing. They don't sell the tickets and they don't sweep up afterward. Does that make sense?
So does. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Your perspective on big rocks and how to craft and put that together?
I have been a big believer in that principle for a very long bit of time. I've been a lukewarm practitioner because it seems like I I haven't quite uh, I haven't quite employed the full principle, especially in the area of family versus work. So that's been my big blind spot over a long bit of time. But 100% agree. The thing that is most pronounced in that principle to me is asking yourself the question, not how, but who. Not how, but who. Right.
Right.
And so when you talk about the 4 assistants that you have behind the scenes, I think for many people, and I know I'm making a blanket statement here, but for many people, they want control. And so the idea of having 4 assistants in the background processing anything that you think you can do better yourself, or you can do
Right.
faster yourself, or you can do, right?
Right.
It's not reality. And it doesn't allow you to scale. And it doesn't
Mhm.
allow for you to have that sort of good work-life balance, or allow you to be intentional about different things in your life that are fruitful, right? You
Right.
just, it's a hard thing to give up. It's a very hard thing to give up.
You,
I
you,
think especially in a task-oriented world like property management tends to be at times.
you are right. And I'm going to give you the way that I began to process. I'm going to share 2 principles. One, I'm going to share the 4 Ds. Okay.
Okay.
And then 2, I'm going to share with you what really rings in my head about what I'm willing to give up. Okay. Because if I had to say to you at the end of the day, you either will have 30 extra minutes to be with, in my case, my firstborn, that extra window, or whether I was going to respond to 2 more emails or make 2 more phone calls, I pressed everything up against, am I willing to give this up so that I could have time with my family, my wonderful bride, and my kids? And that's what I pressed everything up against. Every minute, every minute that I ask, hey, could you call so-and-so, get them on my calendar? Can you send this email? Can you respond to that? Every time I do that, I create 1 minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 30, whatever that is.
Right.
But it's an accounting principle that says if I have somebody completing a task for 1 minute, which gives me back another minute to do something else, that's an 8, 9, or 10, that really was a decision for what? 2 minutes.
Right. That makes sense.
And it adds up over the course of a day. 2 minutes is 4, 4 is 8, 8 is 8. All of a sudden you go, wait a minute, I'm living my best life. All I'm doing is singing at the mic. I'm scaling my company and business. I've got an amazing team underneath me that's rocking, that everyone's empowered, that knows what they're doing. And we're soaring and we're reaching our business goals as an organization. And I'm working 5 hours or 3 hours or 2 hours less than I could ever imagine on any given day or week. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay. So that's why I pressed it up. I pressed it up against time with, I could literally see the picture of my son that sat on my desk in those early days. One more quick example. I remember reaching out to my executive assistant and saying, look, I'm just absolutely swamped and buried. I said, I want you to get me, hire me a temp for tomorrow. And Janine, my assistant back in my corporate days, I said, what do you want them to do? I said, I don't know, but I'm swamped. I said, they're just going to sit in the chair in front of me until I figure out. I'm going to pay them. And they're going to sit in the chair in front of me until I figure out. And they would sit there and they said, what do you want me to do? I said, this folder, it needs a label. Okay. Hey, could you copy this? Hey, could you fax this? And all of a sudden, I was giving up tasks that were the 1 to 5. Like I'm giving them up. And that was that first little epiphany that blowback moment. And then I pushed it up against time with my wife, time with my first son, and then obviously other children. And I never looked back. So that goes back to the 4 Ds. 4 Ds. First D is do it. Okay. Response that comes in or a quick text that needs, just do it and handle and get it done. Okay. And you always have that decision. Okay. The other side, once it's done, to dump it. Boom, done. The third is the delegate. That's the real magic. The third D is to delegate it out. And that's where the magic goes. You're handling this. This goes to you. This, I need help, blah, 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 right? And then the fourth D is to decide. And to decide means in the pace of today, this isn't a good time to be doing an employee review, to really do a good job, or to read those financials, or prepare for a new presentation with a new potential client, right? And so to decide means use it in the early morning hours at the end of the day, or time block, another one of our coaching principles. Time block simply means what? You have an appointment with you at 3:15. And you know what's happening at 3:15? That task.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that something you've incorporated? Time blocking for your own tasks? I'm curious.
Yes, and it'd be interesting to hear your opinion about this. So yes, to the time blocking, I call it focus time, and the only reason I call it that is that's because Outlook calls it focus time. But
Yeah.
But I try to be very intentional about where I place those time blocks in that, and I have to measure this against how much energy I need for each one of those respective tasks. So
Right.
there are time blocks where let's say it's a high energy or high output or high intellect or whatever. There's a lot of deep work that is going on during that time block. I would probably put those, or I do put those in the morning time hours because that is when I have amped up energy.
Gotcha.
Afternoon stuff is reserved for what I'd consider tasks or things that don't require as much thought work. So I can show up and give the appropriate amount of energy and time to those particular things that I need to get done. So big rocks tend to happen in the morning,
Yes.
and smaller rock items tend to happen in the afternoon.
Again, you're like reading right out of my playbook. I call that time shifting. Time shifting to your strengths. That's exactly what it is. The big rocks and the high energy ones do, because I have some clients that prefer the afternoon or evening. That's when they perk up, right? So,
Right.
So if you time shift to play to your strengths, that is so spot on. And that is exactly the mindset. And then to be able to put that in your calendar as a booked scheduled appointment, right? So we do a lot of work with our property management clients focused on business development, growing their company, making acquisitions, acquiring competitors. Obviously work on the vendor side, helping with their sales and marketing strategies. But we have reserved windows where we're working on those tasks that are most vital to the organization. And by putting it on the calendar, it lives and it gets done, right?
And would you agree that it's non-negotiable? Because you can be intentional about putting that time block out there, and you can be intentional about your time shifting.
Right.
The hardest part the hardest part, or at least from my perspective,
Yeah.
is somebody shows up that you believe to be a higher and better use of your time. And it may or may not be, but
Right.
you'll sacrifice that appointment with yourself
Right.
before you'll sacrifice anything else, right? That's the hardest part about getting disciplined to those
Yeah.
time blocks. I've done it. I said to my assistant the other day, just violate my focus time. I know we need to talk to that client or we need to do this or
Yeah.
that. Nope, I should not do that, but I do.
I think that's like a quarterback on the line of scrimmage calling an audible. I think there are
Mm,
times, but you call an audible, you just go, hey. But if you find yourself doing that every day, then you have to ask. Okay, so things do come up in various levels of 1 to 10. Hey, so and so, we got to terminate, or we've got a litigious event, or we got the police at one of our buildings. I mean, you know,
that's
in varying levels of need. But to your point, the idea of time blocking is to really honor it, and for the most part, it should happen. But even the concept of time blocking, here we are sort of building your perfect day, and then the time blocking, and then your genius work. We're building all these things because the rest of it is easy.
that's
Making
right.
money, being successful, your career development. If you get the foundational piece, I mean, once we're working with clients over the first 30 and 45 days, we're doing this work. Once we get through this, then it's like, let's go. It's like a Ferrari with no brake pedal. Now we're ready to soar. Because
That's right.
right,
That's
because
right.
we've tidied up the base, and now we're ready to work on their business development, their team, their culture, their profitability. I mean, make no mistake, I am a business coach, but there's always a cheer of support. But we roll up our sleeves and go to work. I mean, I love business. I love financial performance. I love acquisitions. I love eating the lunch of our competitors. I mean, I'll tell you a story. It was it was a little cul-de-sac in San Diego. Again, one of my first experiences, in the multifamily property management world. It was a developer, and then a little cul-de-sac built 600 units, 200, 200, 200, and a couple of years later sold them off to and three different owners, three different management companies, same cul-de-sac, right? And you went into the first one, and they were like, "We're full, top rents. There's a waiting list." You went into the
Nice.
second one, yeah, the second one, and they were running, I don't know, 91 or 92%, and but they were kind of pushing. And then the third one was like 85. Same little cul-de-sac, same little different team, different people. They were like 85, and they were scrambling, they were in trouble. And it taught me that in this business, people make a difference, right? And people and performance and how to help a team rise. And here you had three buildings with exactly the same amenities, the same structure, the same floor plans, and three unique experiences. I'm sure you've seen that, right? That's in part, right? When you take over assets and you see them underperforming, and you come in and work your magic, and there's a formulaic way you do it, right?
That's right. It brings to mind for me. There's an axiom in real estate, and it is location, location, location.
Yeah.
But I think there's an equally, if not more important axiom, and that is, to your point, people, people, people.
Right.
In that equation that you speak to, or at least from my perspective, is you have to go in and you have to understand what really motivates individuals, what really inspires them. And it's not ping pong tables and foosball sets. It's not
Yeah.
that, right? It's getting in there and taking the time to actually get to know someone, understand their
Yes.
story deeply, right? So that you can
Yeah.
understand what really motivates them. And then you can go about setting your processes and your systems and your disciplines and routines in place. But you can't do that until that team knows how much you care.
Ah, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You ever heard those words?
I
Right?
100% true. It's so
Yes.
true. So,
Yeah.
so true.
And then the part about knowing them deeply, again, one of our principles, DPM, which is called what? Deep personal motivators. You once
Love
again,
that.
I'm going, how many
Love,
royalties do I need to send you? Because you're killing me. You
hey, look,
talk about care, you talk about deep.
I
You
read a lot of
just say,
books.
no, listen, no. Beyond that, look, I've had many a call, meeting, and conversation, but there aren't many that we're finishing each other's sentences. Today is spooky and insanely fun. Okay, it is. All right, spooky. It feels like we should be holding this conversation over, a bottle of whiskey or something.
Yeah,
Okay,
oh,
because
yeah,
there's so many parallels. But the part about DPM, let's talk about that a little bit, because you are right. If you're going to reach your team goals, than it is about the individual. And it starts with DPM. So every time we begin working with our corporate clients, whether it's from the site, the leadership, the executive, doesn't matter the size of the company, every single person that we work with and on their team completes leadership assessments. Okay. And we process more than 10,000 a year. We've been doing it for the last 26 years. Okay. And it starts off by telling us what those deep personal motivators are. Now, there's 10 key driving values and motivators. Some are easier to read. For example, someone who's patient or not, someone who's extrovert or not, or detailed or not. But there's deep motivators about our passion for learning, our passion for expertise in our sector, our economic drivers, our ego, large or small, our spirituality. In other words, those deep motivators. And it literally gives me and our clients a 5-year head start. Okay, 5-year head start. And it also means put the right person in the right role. So if we look at a company, whether it's on the vendor or the property management side, we look at the best people inside the organization and we benchmark for those DPMs. And then those we're looking to hire, we compare in advance.
God, that's
okay.
got it. Got it.
So you're matching up. So and that's one piece of it. And then we use what we call is a selection summary. So we take the deep personal motivators. We then have a scoring system that looks at their industry experience, certifications, designations, and then we look at some of the skill sets that are required for the particular positions, and we build a selection summary for every single position within an organization, match it up with the DPMs, and then there's a scoring system for looking at 3 candidates side by side. So you're doing what? Making better hires. Because if you want a great team, you don't need 3 left fielders. You don't need 2 pitchers. Make certain you put the right person in the right role, and they'll soar, right?
That's right. That's right. I could not agree more. And it's interesting. I've worked for 4 different organizations over, well, 5 different organizations in my career in property management. Right. And only one, I think only one, had an actual system for hiring people, right? And the system, even that system in my mind was a little bit flawed in that it was just behavioral based, right? And I think, and I work for Radco, we don't have this completely fleshed out yet, but in my head, there's not just a behavioral piece of an interviewing process. There's also a motivational piece, right? So you have behavioral based, you have motivational based. Right. See a lot of motivational based in the kind of a homeless environment where you're out trying to help people. You bring them in and you interview them based on motivations, because people who aren't motivated to help themselves are not going to help themselves. But you can make that business applicable, right? And to your point, when you've selected the right people, the second step, or maybe the first step, is you have to make sure you put those people in the right seats on that bus, right? The old Jim Collins stuff.
That's right.
You really got to get people in the right seats, because you can have superstar A players across the board, but if you've got a guy driving the bus that should be actually sitting in the middle seat running some other piece of your organization, they're not going to be happy. And by extension, your company is not going to be happy, because you always have this little fly in the ointment, so to speak. So both of those things are super important.
Well, and what you're talking about is what we call a gap analysis. Okay. If you put, Mary in that role, you put Tim in this role, can they do that role? Which I'll share a little bit about piloting before we put people in that role. But if you're managing a current team, it's gap analysis. Mary in this role needs to do these 10 things. And if we were to grade her, which by the way is another one of our coaching principles, if we were to grade her on those 10, she could be an A, she could be a B, and then she could be a C or D in these categories. And then the next step is what? To have a real, frank, honest conversation. Look, I'd like you to rate and rank them. Let's look at them side by side. And then let's talk about, can we coach through that gap? Can we? Yeah. About a third of the time we can, 2/3 we cannot. In most cases, the individual will tell you they honestly know that they can't. And then we can talk about pivoting them into another role, possibly, or something else. But that gap analysis, that get real conversation, from that perspective. But there are 9 steps to making a perfect hire. Well, we believe that comes from exactly what you're talking about, which is a systematic approach, everything from the ads that we place, the resumes we review, to the pre-hire phone interview, to the first, second, and third, to hiring laboratories. Don't just tell me you can do it. Here's the laboratory I want you to step in and do.
Oh,
Okay,
this is
and show me. Okay, and then the incorporating of the assessments and the benchmarking on the side. So there's an art and a science to really bring in the very best people. So if you bring in the best people, then it's what? How do you onboard them? How do you coach and train them? And then how do you help them soar? And how do you help them with their career paths as well? You know, your greatest accomplishment as a leader is how many people have you internally promoted over the last 12, 24, and 36 months, which means not only you make great hires, but you prepared them for the next step and the next step. That's the ultimate, isn't it?
oh
Right?
yes, it is the ultimate testament to
Yeah,
your success. Yeah, yeah,
that's
I
right.
100% agree with that. I have to ask this based on
Yeah.
that. So what you just described there in terms of a hiring process, my imagination tells me that many people in our listening and sort of viewing audience would say, gosh, Ernest, that sounds like a tremendous amount of time. That sounds like a
Yeah.
lot of time to try to get somebody through. So
Yeah.
I have to imagine that I halfway know the answer to this, but I would love to I would I would love to hear your perspective on this because I'm quite certain it's spot on.
I have heard that those words over and over. This will take forever, and blah blah blah. And I literally say, go to your inbox. I just gave you the 5-day blueprint that you could start on a Monday and hire them on Friday. 9 steps, and I
Yep.
literally map out what happens each day just to address that point. Okay,
I love
so
that.
so trust me, I've heard that more than once. But I also say, here's the counterpoint: if somebody steps out of the process because your process is too full and complete, they just gave you a gift. We accept the gift. You'll never fit in our structure because it is the golden rule. Mike, if I'm coming to work for your company, you have the gold. You set the rules. If you say jump, I jump. If you say cantaloupe, I say cantaloupe. I'm just going to respond to whatever it is you're going to ask me to do because I'm coachable, I'm sensible, and I want to be on your team. Isn't that who you want to hire? Versus, who do you think you are? And I'm not doing that. And I got this attitude. Huh? Take that attitude elsewhere because
Right.
I'm not bringing you on board. That's the first part. Secondly, team members begin to realize or do realize that part of your company culture is we only bring on the best. So they want to do their best because they know that you're not bringing in the jamokes, that you're really truly bringing on the best of the best. And high water raises all boats. And that is really the spirit of why you make good hires. And your team counts on that from your leadership perspective, which means the organization grows again and grows again and grows even faster as a result. Does that make sense?
It 100% does. 100% does.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing that. I have to, it just came to mind. This is how my head works.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a point that you made. And I know we were talking about, you use the term grading individuals, this area, this area, this area
Yeah.
across 10 or whatever the
Yeah.
number of disciplines are. But and having those candid conversations. I actually have a sort of a two-part, completely two different category question. One is the word accountability, and I unpack accountability for our audience, what that means. And then the other piece of that is courageous conversations in moments of truth. And I know accountability and courageous conversations and moment of truth kind of play together, but I'd love your perspective first and foremost on candid conversations, and then having the courage to address something in a moment rather than, hey, my child put his hand in the cookie jar and got something out and ate it before dinner, and then you address that on a Friday when it happened on a Monday, and how unvaluable that is. So if you could talk to those 2 points, I'd love that.
Uh, that's so spot on. You know, from a coaching perspective, whether it's in my coaching role or in my corporate days, I've always believed step over nothing. You know, it's far better. And by the way, this also relates to marriages and relationships. Far better to address, hey, that was hurtful, or what you just said wasn't appropriate, or, in a relationship, in a marriage, is far healthier than, you've really been dragging for like a week on me. And you really, it's like those are volcanic moments, and relationships don't survive. It's far easier to just light a match and light a match and, hey, I'm so sorry, let me apologize. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing in business. If you walk in my office and you haven't prepared for the financial budgets we're doing, I'm going to stop right there and go, hey, time out. Okay. My first piece is I own that if I didn't fully prepare you for today, I take responsibility as a leader. And if you heard me in my coaching work, I'll say, hey, 95% of that failure is yours as a leader. And they're like, what? Johnny didn't come in with the right financial prep. I said, yes, but what was your prep? And did you ensure they could not fail? So we go back and, okay, no, actually we didn't, or maybe I didn't. Okay, so let's go work on our internal systems, because was it really that person's failure or your failure as a leader? Okay, now let's assume we've done all the work, we mapped everything out, we've got everybody on board or trained on that particular aspect of the financials. Now it is the individual, and that's where you have that heart to heart. Hey, remember when we covered, remember the outline of all the things? Okay, let's look at that together. Let's look at points 5, 6, and 7. Do you see how that does not match with what's in the financials? Let's talk about that. That's the coaching moment. So it has to start with, did you give them everything they need on that side? Always looking at the mirror first, okay? But then assuming we have, and that everything's in place, then there's that get real conversation with that individual, because either they failed to work through the training, the checklist, the onboard, whatever it was, or their attitude is off. And if their attitude is off, I'm going to terminate you, okay? Because that's not acceptable. If it's a coachable thing, hey, maybe you don't have as much understanding with Excel, or maybe point number 5 could have been more clear. Let's go update that note for the next time. We'll own it together. Or you just chose not to look at point number 5. Okay, that's the coaching moment, and that's courageous to have it, but it's also a get real conversation, right? Wouldn't you agree from that perspective?
I 100% agree. I agree 100% on all of it. 2 points that are highlighted for me. One is, it is the leader's job, leader/manager, and we could unpack those 2 terms, but it's a leader's job to be incredibly clear, right? To the point you ask that kind of knock-on question, are we clear, right? Or are there any areas of this that don't really make sense to you? And if so, please ask those questions so that we can be crystal clear on what the expectation is. And then the other thing that's most pronounced to me is mirror first, right? Because a lot of times we don't look in the mirror as leaders and say, hey, where did I miss in this equation? We just automatically default to, this person didn't read my mind. I can't understand why they can't read my mind. I can't understand why they can't read my mail. And just presupposing that they messed up because of something on their part. You play a role in that as a leader. And owning that is a big deal. And owning that in the eyes and in presence of that person that you're coaching and mentoring is a big deal. Being vulnerable, right?
Absolutely. And the coaching and guidance happens real time. Back to your point, it happens real time. I'm not waiting till, even this afternoon, you brought in financial information or prep for a meeting that is subpar. Let's talk about it. Let's address it right here. And then I want you to, let's go back and do the work, or let's together go update the notes of, whatever the expectations were. And then I'm going to praise you. And then hey, nice job. That's great. And the next time, this is how it rolls. And a person on your team learns to trust you, right? That they can come to you, and that they can honestly share, their work, and not be, scolded or not, have you yelling and throw them out of the office. But no, hey, listen, is this your best work? Is this our best work in the way that we detail it out? For example, in my corporate days, budgets would come in and budget expectations would all be in writing. And the first year, I just kind of, everything is in writing, and that was it. And everybody came back with a different set of budget. And I was like, okay, this is not working. And even to this day, in my with all the corporate work that I do, it's the same. I was like, how do you roll out your budget? How do you roll out, the process? Well, we just, I'm like, okay, here's the way to do it. We bring everyone together, whether it's by conference call or by Zoom. We have all the written instructions, and then we map all the details, and everyone's there together, and they hear it once, the same time. So there's no, I didn't understand, you didn't understand. There's no 2 versions of it. And if in general they have a question, they go to each other because they want to double check, right? That they're all delivering the same level of excellence, and you get really strong, consistent, in this case, budget or whatever the example might be. So I've sort of learned as well, that's one of our coaching principles, which is just coach in a circle, not in a triangle. And the circle simply means we're all together, we're all on the same page, we all understand. Triangle means I'm going to talk to you, and then later today I'll talk to Mary, and the next day I'll talk to Rick, right? Those are triangles. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So yeah, so you again, you raise a great point about, working with teams, and we all, and then we have, it kind of leads us to the next discussion, which is, what about when you have a team and you have a low performer, right? You've identified a low performer. What is your take on that when you have that low performer, and how you're either going to coach or guide them. What have you observed regarding that?
So when I see a low performer, provided all of those predicates are in place, to your points about making sure they are fully prepared, they have all the tools, they have clarity of outcome. If all of those things are in place and we have a low performer, I seek first to understand. So I would sit them in a room. In today's world, that's not a Zoom meeting. Let's sit down in an office face to face so you can see my body language and I can see yours, because I think that's important. There are a lot of messages that are sent by that mechanism. But so I seek first to understand where something might be amiss in the system or the process.
Right.
If we get clarity around that, if there's nothing missing there, what is it that is happening in your world, right? Is something going on in your personal life? You don't have to give me all the details, but if there is something going on in your personal life, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can get you a day off or a week off or a month off, because I value you that much.
Right.
And to go help you get that sorted out. By the way, if there's some sort of company resource that we can give to you, fantastic. Let's do that if it makes sense. But we need to get you back to your A game, because if we can't work through this and we can't get you back to your A game, the business still needs this outcome. Therefore, we need to figure out an exit strategy that works for you, certainly, and works for us. But that would be my probably long way of saying I would try to lead with empathy, but certainly have the clarity on the backside. If we don't get it worked out, then
Yeah.
we have to address it.
That's really that's a perfect balance, and that's where extraordinary leaders soar. That is the balance. It's it's 1/3. Is there anything happening that I need to know on the personal side or anything else in terms of the dynamics? And then it's 2/3 honesty, right? Having an honest conversation. Where are the gaps? Do you not have the skill set? Do you not understand? Or are you truly not interested in doing the work?
Oh,
Right?
that's a big one, right? Exactly right.
Yeah. And we're going to get to the bottom of that, because I am going to map out the systems. I am going to talk to you about the skill set. If we've got all those pieces, you should be aces. Here's the playbook. But if you tell me you're not willing to work from the playbook, you're not willing to deliver, then we're going to part. And it's really an easy decision. And so when I have clients that come in, we talk about derailing team members all the way up to the executive level. We go right down the same checklist. Is there anything personal going on? Is there anything, family, health wise, financial? Great. Okay. No. Okay. Then let's go down the skill set. The skill set, is everything in place? Is everything being communicated? And then do they have the attitude? Really the attitude to thrive and to soar. And if they do, I want them. And if they don't, I don't. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And it's interesting. I think that over a long bit of time, if somebody has been plugged in, they've been thriving over a long bit of time with all the predicates in place, people do. I've seen this play out by way of example at the property manager level, probably most so, but I'm sure it happens in other places. But there's sort of this like shelf life for property managers. Certainly there are lifers in that property manager role,
Right.
but I just have made observation over a long bit of time that there's sort of this shelf life. So an A player at some point becomes disinterested in the work, not because they're not good at it or they're
Right.
not capable of being A players, but it's just I'm not growing anymore. I'm not challenged anymore. I'm not pressed intellectually anymore. And so I've lost interest.
Mm-hmm.
And those people still have value in your organization, but businesses oftentimes will just tolerate that type of
Yeah.
performance, right?
Yeah.
And they'll let that individual tolerate that sort of lack of performance in themselves.
Right.
And you end up with what? A cul-de-sac with one property at 85 and the other one at 90s.
Full of the waiting list, right?
Right.
So once again, let's use the term lifers. I cannot believe you pull that out of the hat. I have often said those terms to the vendors, saying, pull up LinkedIn, look at the number of lifers in this category that started from leasing, and now today they're running companies. So
Yeah.
I use that term once again, Mike. You like blow my mind. Like you're using my jargon. I'm using your jargon. I need to pay you a royalty.
No,
Let's
no,
start all
no,
over
no.
again.
Oh no.
It's crazy, but it is true. And let's talk about lifers for just a second. You know, there's the obvious, those that want to be on a career path. Respectfully, we have one of our clients, multifamily, that there was an assistant manager who said, "Listen, I'm being very transparent. I am going to, plan to make a career transition. Let me tell you why. Because you have a small portfolio. The manager I report to is aces. I'm never going to take her role. I really want to build my career with a company that I can make some steps and progress." To which we were like, "You're right." And for me as a coach to say, "You're spot on," and totally get that. And thank you for being so transparent. So that's an example. So depending on the size of the company, we have career paths that can go from leasing to assistant to manager to district to region. We have kind of what we might call it classic. I always lean on every certification and designation, work on it and go get it. Always a believer in that. I imagine that matches your own as well, right?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
100%. But then you have other things, like you have some that might go, "Hey, put me on the lease ups, or put me on the turnarounds, or hey, give me a project that I might work in the corporate office, or hey, I'd love to mentor the new hires." So there's some additional paths that can kind of bring to life. Have you seen some of that? We've got people that may be stale or maybe a little burnt out, but you light them up into other things and they soar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The one that comes to most mind or to mind most readily is so we're in growth mode right now.
Yeah.
And those individuals who become a part of our transition team. So they take our
Love it.
company culture and they plug it
Right.
into our new properties that we're onboarding. And they just light up because they're able to displace the knowledge that they have about our organization, not only from a systems and a processes perspective, but from a culture,
Yes.
right? Culture and attitude perspective. And certainly we pick the people that are good ambassadors of that.
Right.
But
Right.
I have seen it, to your point. I've seen that really light up their career. It had put a little notch in their cap because they can go out and do those sorts of things for us.
Right. Absolutely. It lights them up. You add some additional compensation to that to recognize them for that. You let them
Right.
be the star at the show at some of your upcoming meetings or regionals. You let them showcase that. And there's a way to revitalize those, that to help them to continue to soar. They're valuable team members. And then once again, what does that message say to other team members? Wow, look at Mike, who's got Sally just propped up on this project, or Rick over here, who's really rocking on this. Well, I wonder if I can. And all of a sudden, you have this culture of what else could I do and what else. So it doesn't always have to be a classic trajectory of role and responsibility, because hey, maybe you don't have 50,000 units you're managing. Maybe you have 5,000. Maybe you only have 500. Right. So there's different ways to engage team members and really make it interesting, for them, and for them to be excited, which again raises your company culture, which also is so valuable when you're promoting internally because you're preparing people. So I want to talk about that for just a second. There is a principle on the coaching side when we're working with team members called piloting. You ever heard that
Okay.
term before? To pilot?
I I've heard the term, but
Yeah.
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe in concept. Maybe in
Yeah.
concept. Okay. Do you remember early on when you promoted somebody from a role from role A to role B, and they were rock star in role A, and now they're stumbling in role B? And now
Sure.
you're thinking, "Oh my God, what do I do now?" She was amazing. He was amazing in role A. I promoted them too quickly to role B. They may not make it there, which means I've lost one person. And then I lost my ace over here, which means I technically am going to lose two people because I got to fill two roles, because now his or her ego is so hell bent on this role. What do I do? In other words, I'm telling you, everything I've ever coached on is because I have failed. I have failed in my corporate days. I'm sure you have one of those moments you go, "Oh my God, I got someone failing in this role, but now it's too late."
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've done
Okay.
that more than once.
All right. Me as well. I got every battle scar, baby. Every battle scar, even on the hiring and everything I've talked about. I could actually go back in everything we talked about and by name or situation tell you where I failed to be able to explain how not to fail. Okay. So now let's introduce pilot. Pilot says that let's use a site person. You have a leasing person that wants to step up and be an assistant manager. Okay. Rather than step them in and have them belly flop, possibly. Okay. Let's give that leasing person a pilot task. And the pilot says for the next 60 days, we're going to behind the scenes work on this. I'm going to give you some projects behind the scenes that you would be doing in this role, and let's see how you do. I'm going to coach and guide you. We're going to map out what those tasks are. At the end of every week, we're going to talk about them. We're going to grade them together. You're going to grade. I'm going to grade. We're going to go back and forth. Hey, I know you really want that role, but you really have to be stronger in your Excel. Here's the course I want you to take. Hey, these are the things related to financials, or these are the related to lease renewals, or whatever it might be. And by the way, for those vendors and suppliers on the other side, it's a similar pattern.
Sure.
By using the pilot, let's see how that leasing person is able to step up. Let's see if they can handle the extra pressure. Let's see if they can take the initiative. Let's see if they're coachable in that period of time, but all done in a safe environment. Let's imagine that leasing person says, I got to be honest, we're 2 weeks in to an 8-week pilot. I realize it's not for me. Or they go, hey, I'm fighting like hell, and I've got 8 of the 10, but this is the gap analysis. I'm struggling on these 2. Let's keep working. We'll work through the 8 weeks. They may or may not make it, but it's all done discreetly behind the scenes, so there's not the ego or the embarrassment or the belly flop. If it works, it's logical to have them soar. And if it doesn't, they can step right back to their prior position.
I love that. I love that.
Okay.
And I imagine that you pre-bake these tasks, or these tasks are already there because there's somebody that does that role, but you pre-bake the checklist, so to speak, or the 8-week task list.
Right.
That way it's right there front and ready. It's not something you're creating on the fly, but I love that concept. Love that.
Yeah. Well, what would you do? You'd pull the assistant manager job description.
That's right.
Okay.
That's what
and then you punch out from there how we're going to run that pilot of what we're going to work on, and then that sets the scoring system. Let's do a baseline. Where are you today in this or this? Have you seen that? Have you had experience with this? Yes, no, yes. Let's work our way through. Then we're going to map, and here comes the time block. I've got time blocks, or this is who you're going to get cross-trained by, or this is who you're going to work in the corporate office to begin to fill out these skills or begin to learn. And then here comes another one of these coaching principles. And by the way, as you're learning that skill, you're going to make notes. Okay. And at the end of the day, I want to review those notes. We might modify them. We might change them. We might add more or less. And those notes each and every day, and what you're doing in the pilot, become a bit of a guide so that you can go and reference and so forth. But it also becomes what? A mini training manual. Okay. So every time you want to take a leasing person to assistant manager, you now have what? A training manual for how to run the pilot. Okay. Okay.
I love that. It brings something to mind that the meeting is the work and the work is the meeting, right? I have forever believed that when we are training in a utopian environment, is you're doing the work as you're being trained, and you're training as you're doing the work, right? To your point about taking notes, and that act of taking notes is creating a training manual.
Right.
It all plays together.
It does. And the same works when you want an assistant to a manager to a district or regional. It's the same piece. And you go, we got training manuals, we got onboarding, we don't do it. Yeah, but do you have pilots that cover the gap? Rarely, if never, do I hear those words. And that gives you the blueprint on that side. And by doing the pilot discreetly behind the scenes, there's no pressure on the individual. You can see if they take the initiative and they're coachable. You can see if you can narrow the gap in the skill. And if it works, they soar. And if it doesn't, then they can settle back into the role. Now, there is one other piece, and that is certainly the compensation part. They want to step up and blah, blah, blah. And I'll always say, look, in that pilot role, look, there is going to be a bonus component or a one-off. Here's what we're going to do for the next 60 days while you're doing this. And I'm going to, pay you. I'm going to gift you. I'm going to provide a bit of a bonus structure because you're doing more and you're doing. So there's always that part too. It's a win-win. So even if they don't get promoted, at least they know they also got paid something extra. I mean, is it $500? Is it $5,000, $2,500, whatever it is? But there's a level of appreciation, and they're okay with that too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love that.
So, anyhow, pilots. So
that's good stuff.
Oh man, hey, listen, we've covered the rainbow. I've so enjoyed, talking about people, which then leads to performance, which leads teams to soar. And then beyond that, I mean, the balance of at the time of what we do is what we focus on peak performance. We focus with our clients on business acquisitions, business growth, business development, which is a vital part. So often companies grow in our sector or organically, and our focus is organic is a gift. Let's go get the biz that we really want. Let's go earn the biz on that side. And that has led to a whole variety of ways that we serve our clients, whether it's the coaching side, team side, recruiting, helping our clients bring in the best people to the best companies, helping our clients make acquisitions of competitors, right? On that side. Yeah. So there's a whole variety of things that we do. We love pushing the envelope for business success, but that's easy when you've got everything else that we've talked about today as the foundation to catapult forward. You follow me on that?
I do. I feel like I could talk to you all afternoon.
Well, I have to tell you, I was so honored the reaching out, and I was so thrilled that we'd be connecting here. But I literally had no idea. It's like we pre-scripted. Like I sent you my notes, like you peered into my jargon land. The use of the same words. It's really. I think in Seinfeld, George Costanza calls it Bizarro World or something. No, but it is. Yeah.
Maybe I've just listened to all 178 episodes of Power Hour.
Well, listen, along that line, all right. So just by way of wrap up, so this past year, I've been inspired to kind of capture and sort of capture and gather. It started with 100 topics that were kind of the reoccurring themes that we have seen in leaders, sales, marketing, business, the best practices, right? Started with a list of 100, then it grew to 200, 250. As recent as this past week, it's 350 topics. It's a 2-year project, maybe more, but 350 topics that I craft something called Power Minute by Power Hour. Okay. 1 minute on time shifting, 1 minute on time blocking, 1 minute on genius work, all the things we've talked about. And so I produce, a 60-second, 2 or 3 in a week. I tee them up on LinkedIn. I have a page that I organize all 350. And there are these snippets. We just finished number 80. And so 80 of 350 are there on my LinkedIn profile. And you can listen. It's 60 seconds on one topic. And there it is that you can then carry that wisdom into your day with your team and so forth. So that's been my most recent project. I think you probably know myself and Carrie Kirby of Multifamily Biz have hosted more than 140 educational webcasts. And we've had some wonderful awards and recognition. And we've worked together for almost 15 years. And that has always been about be generous. Every month, come listen to what we consider best practices. Every month, here are the things I'm going to share with you in writing. And now, Power Minute by Power Hour is just a little snippet about, a coaching principle, much like the things that we've been talking about. So anyhow, I share that with you. It's there. I share that with those of you who are listening. Simply come into my LinkedIn profile under Ernest Oriente or come into my Power Hour site. I shared with you as well, Mike. We have 20 LinkedIn groups, the largest in our sector. We have 130,000 readers and leaders, right, all over the world. And so that's really kind of the signature part of, what we do. Be generous. Every month, share educational information. And in our sector, we really love to, see those in our sector soar. So just an absolute honor to have you reach out to me and for us to hang and for us to roll. Really awesome.
I love it. And I can't express my gratitude enough. And, beyond the fact that you've curated not only all those leaders, but all that wisdom over this many, many years in the industry and giving back and serving. It's just, it's a personal piece of gratitude on my part to sit on a call with you, because when I was a rookie in the multifamily space back in 1995, 1996, 7 or 8, whenever I subscribed to your stuff, when I think about my career track and what fed me along the way, your Power Hour email newsletter, I kid you not, it's just been a mainstay in my life and in my career, and I just can't thank you enough for that. just because it fed me in good times and in bad. It really fed me, and I was
Well,
inspired by it.
well, thank you. My work is a vocation, truly a vocation. First and foremost, I deeply love helping those reach their dreams and goals. And every dream in my life has come true. As I shared with you before we got started, everything I could ever have imagined, my wonderful bride, 3 wonderful children, happy in their lives, living in a ski resort, working with clients. Every day is my birthday. Every dream in my life has come true. And so it's a vocation first and foremost. So it's never a question of, I'm doing this or I'm doing that or how much time to say. No, it's I truly love my day and I love the work that I do with teams and leaders. So thank you so much, and absolute joy and delight. I hope to those of you that are listening to Mike and myself, Mike, I'm so impressed with your body of work and your commitment to our space and sector. And thank you for your giving back. And I hope that we'll have another opportunity to come back together and we'll swap some more jargon like knifers. And
I
big
love it.
rocks, big rocks, and DPMs. I mean, it's like, oh my God, truly unbelievable, really incredible. So,
This has been a ton of fun. I truly appreciate it. And yes, I would love to do a round 2 at some time. That would just be awesome.
beautiful. All right, man. Well, thank you so much, and absolutely a pleasure being here together. Okay.
Thanks, Ernest.
All
Talk
right.
soon.
Take care, Mike. All righty.
Bye now.
All right.